Lover's affair with my wife and his punishment. I am the worst connoisseur of women on the planet. Because I'm told I'm a very good-looking guy, I've never had a problem attracting women. It's just that apparently I'm only attracted to true women. While I am pleasant to cute girls who show interest in me, I only seem to date those who take advantage of my good nature. By the time I was 23, I'd had 5 significant, supposedly exclusive relationships. All of them ended when the cheating woman I was dating cheated on me. I'd lost all confidence in my ability to judge women and all hope of finding someone who would be faithful to me, but with at least the last 2 cheaters, I'd caught the signs that they were cheating and was able to dump them much more smoothly than the first 3. Then I met Laura. I was pleased that I was attracted to Laura, as she seemed different from my 5 failed cases. Perhaps the biggest difference was that she was smart, really smart. While I had a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering, Laura, she was a year older than me, had a master's degree in electronic engineering and was top of her class at one of the top 10 engineering schools in the country. Laura and I met on a wilderness outing. The attraction was almost instantaneous, at least for me, but having learned from 5 failed relationships, I didn't throw myself at her. I behaved calmly, at least to some extent. However, when I saw how she politely but firmly blew off many of the other male contestants trying to get her to settle down, and when I had several intelligent conversations with her about technology, current affairs, and the possibilities of extraterrestrial life, not at all unlike the ones I'd had with my previous hot but somewhat insubstantial cheating girlfriends, I fell hard in love. Fortunately, it seemed that Laura was in love too, because by the 5th day of the 8-day outing, we were living in the same tent and having raucous sex. If I still had any misgivings, they disappeared after the 3rd sex. Despite the fatigue we had experienced during the day, our first sex was amazing. The morning I woke up with the first rays of the sun and saw Laura's radiant smile. "Isn't that the best way to sleep it off, Brent?" She giggled. "Better than anything but sex, first thing in the morning, Laura," I hummed. 5 minutes later, I was making love to Laura again. I couldn't contain my admiration for Laura. Aside from her high intelligence, Laura was just a sex machine. The only problem with Laura was maintaining her high libido. Once she gave herself to me, it was total. No hesitation. There were probably some warning signs during our whirlwind 150-day courtship, but I was either too oblivious or too serene from having sex an average of twice a day. The only warning sign I noticed was her friendship with a guy named Clyde Barrow, whom I considered a nerd and she considered an intellectual. Yes, he really was called that, although his full name was Samuel K. Barrow, with no indication that the K stood for Clyde. One would have thought he would have changed his name, or at least gone by Sam, especially since his line of work constantly dealt with banks. Instead, he always smiled broadly when we met and raised his eyebrows at introductions. Although the passion of our courtship obviously could not be constant, even after 2 years of marriage, Laura and I either had sex or made love an average of 6 times a week. We were very compatible outside of the bedroom as well, and for the first time since my first girlfriend cheated on me, which was about 7 years ago, I felt comfortable in a relationship. Laura and I made good money as engineers, and she was somewhat of an expert, or so it seemed to me, at managing our finances, so I was glad she was handling that side of our relationship. Even though I thought she was good with numbers and money, I was surprised, since we were only 26 and 27 years old, that shortly before our 2nd anniversary, we were able to afford a detached house in a nice suburban neighborhood. Even more surprising was our ability to put down 1/3 of the purchase price as a down payment. "Wow, baby! How did we manage to save that much money?" whistled I. "I made some good investments and got a big bonus this year, Brent," she smiled. "You're a genius," I laughed. "And more importantly, a genius at sex," she hummed back, stroking my body. Soon I was making love to her to celebrate our purchase. The only major irritant for me in the first 2+ years of our marriage was dealing with Clyde on an average of once every 2 weeks. Clyde usually had a date when we socialized, but not always. His female companions were always beautiful but promiscuous. A few of them hit on me. He rarely dated the same woman twice, although there was one cheater he called Bonnie. She giggled every time he did. I never learned her real name. Who he brought around at least half a dozen times. Bonnie had a deuce, light blonde hair, a pleasant, though not very pretty face, and very, very pretty cheeks and thighs. She was most likely a call girl. As naive as I was, when on 2 separate occasions out of Laura's hearing range, Bonnie offered me a freebie, even I could understand it. It was clear that Laura disliked Bonnie. Perhaps she had overheard one of her propositions. Whatever the reason, I think Laura had talked to Clyde about how she felt about Bonnie, and after the second time she proposed to me, didn't ask her out again. After about 28 months of marriage, Laura came to me with a strange problem. She brought it up right after we made love. After talking for a few more minutes about what a great time we had, Laura turned the conversation to a few other light topics, and then hit me. By the way, I wanted to tell you about a problem Clyde had. Oh, was my only response, my mind still brimming with endorphins from our lovemaking experience. The government charged him with fraud. I know he's innocent, but it bothers him. His lawyer said he needs to find some great witnesses to testify on his behalf, she murmured, occasionally kissing my face or neck. Are you going to testify? I asked, coming to my senses a little. Well, I had an arrest for a minor incident when I was 19, was the first I'd heard of it. And I don't have a stellar reputation like you do in the charity community, she said. The last statement referred to the fact that I was the youngest board member of the largest and most recognizable charity in our area, one that I had been volunteering for since I was a teenager. Then she continued, and Clyde's lawyer said you'd be the best witness he could find. You'd do that for me, wouldn't you, honey? Even if it wasn't for Clyde. Sensing some hesitation on my part, Laura Siao made love to me. This obviously meant agreeing to her question, because after we separated, she said, "Thank you, darling, for the wonderful sex and for agreeing to help Clyde." Shortly after our sex, during which Laura got me to tacitly agree to be a witness in Clyde's favor, my feelers went up. It all started when I carelessly left my camera in an inconspicuous place on the dresser in our bedroom. Of course, Laura, an electronics engineer and a very observant person like I'd never met before, jumped on me with questions. Although she pretended to be joking, there was something disturbing in the expression on her face. "What are you doing, my dear Brent? Trying to catch me on camera with one of my many lovers?" She grinned. We were both joking about it, but my antennae were up. They went up even more when I searched for some random thing I'd inadvertently lost when I opened the trunk of her car and saw what I was sure was, although I'm a chemical engineer, not an electronics engineer like Laura, electronic sweeping detection equipment. Upon returning from Attorney Clyde's office, my antennas didn't just go up, they pulsed. I asked Clyde's attorney, John Justice, good name for an attorney, don't you think, to tell me about the case against Clyde. When he did, I saw a couple of documents that looked familiar. I was sure I'd seen them on Laura's desk. Justice decided that the case against Clyde was really 50-50, and that my testimony could be a clue. After the judge read my biography and was very pleased with it, including my college awards and charity work, I told the judge what an honest man I knew Clyde to be. When I told him that I was greatly exaggerating, if not lying, and even made up some stories about how Clyde had acted rigorously in the past, even when duplicity could not be detected. Justice was very pleased. Knowing that Laura was too smart for me to catch her cheating and that typical electronic surveillance equipment was no good, given her experience, I searched the internet on my work computer for some alternative. I couldn't believe my luck when, after about 40 minutes of searching, I came across a new product, a mattress sold by a Spanish company under the brand name Mattress, TM. As the name implies, This $1,700 mattress sends a text message when the mattress is used while the owner is away. The text not only tells you that the mattress is in use, but also how many people are lying on it, as well as the total weight of all the people on it. I bought a mattress TM and an HD camcorder the same day. For the entire next week, until the mattress was delivered, I complained about our old mattress. It was relatively cheap, so my complaints weren't blatantly false. During that time, I also turned over all of our financial information I could gather to a forensic accountant for verification. I installed mattress TM while Laura was at work and made sure to get home before she arrived. "Honey, I have a surprise for you. Remember when I complained about our tufted mattress?" "Yes," she hesitantly replied. "Well, I have the best mattress according to Consumer Report. Let's go try it out," I snickered with a smirk on my face. "You're an animal," she complained mockingly, as I practically ripped off her clothes and then had sex with her, on our new mattress with as much intensity as I had ever demonstrated. As we lay there in bliss, Laura murmured, "Well, that was as nice a baptism as any mattress has ever received. However, since I now have no spine, you'll have to either make dinner or get takeout, but not until after I've recovered," before turning onto her side and quickly falling into a peaceful slumber. I got up and checked the message on my phone from mattress TM. Mattress was used by 2 people from 6:03 to 6:46 p.m. Total weight 325 lbs. Used by 1 person from 6:46 p.m. to present. Weight 135 lbs. Since I weigh about 200 pounds and Laura weighs 130 pounds, and since it was 6:48 when I checked the text, a huge smile appeared on my face. That weekend, I went to visit my octogenarian neighbor who lived across the street, Tom Watson. I had been friends with Tom since we moved in. He was a widower with an interesting past, about which he gave only vague details, but which led me to believe that he had been involved in some covert operations during the Cold War. I sometimes swept his sidewalk, and he would pick up or sign for packages for us when we weren't around. After small talk over a pint of beer, I said, "Tom, I need a favor that you won't be at liberty to discuss with anyone else until you're called to testify." He raised his eyebrows. "You think I'm willing to testify in court?" he asked with a wry smile. "Tom, I don't know much about your background, except that you seem to have devoted your life to the pursuit of justice. I assume you haven't had the excitement of youth in the last 10 years, and I hope you miss it and are interested in pursuing justice." His smile turned from sarcastic to welcoming. "Tell me what's on your mind." "No promises," he muttered. "It's supposed to be strictly confidential," I said. Tom laughed. "It's something I know a lot about. It's how I've lived my life." "Okay, strictest confidentiality." "Pinky swear?" grinned I. "Pinky swear," he laughed as our pinkies interlocked. "Okay, it's simple. When I call you, you're going to take this HD camera with a telephoto lens and film any activity outside my house. While I'm not sure what it will be, I'll give you the most likely scenario. A car with 2 people in it will come out of my garage and drive past your house since we are at a dead end. Focus on the car as it drives out of the garage and on the insides of the car as it passes you." "And the testimony?" asked Tom. "And you'll have to testify that you shot the video with this camera on such and such a day and at such and such a time." "Maybe my old bones do need a discharge," he grinned. "Deal." I told him about the camera work, made sure I had his correct phone number, and left, very satisfied. There were several other aspects to my plan. One of them required that I purchase a voice-activated audio recorder, which has virtually no electronic signature when turned off. I found one that could be installed in the existing electric clock in the bedroom, so that the only electronic signature would be a small receiver that could be disguised by the operation of the electric clock. That way, if Laura scoured the room with her detector equipment, she would be unlikely to find it, and I could remotely turn it on whenever I wanted. I also secured a meeting with Dylan Roberts, one of the two most prominent criminal defense attorneys in town, who had nothing to do with Clyde and in fact had a feud with Clyde's attorney. When I told him of my intentions, he smiled broadly and offered to represent me for a third of his usual hourly rate. Now I had a trap to set. I arranged a business trip out of town for 2 days and 1 night. Since Laura always knew where I was, I don't think it was the app on my smartphone, because once when I left it at the office, she found out where I was that day anyway. But how, I don't know. I had to arrange a real trip, not a fake one. Wednesday morning, I kissed Laura goodbye and drove to a town 100 miles away. On the way, I called Tom and asked him to be on the lookout. 10-4, he joked. Around 2 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon as I was leaving, I got a text from Mattress TM saying, "Bed occupied as of 2:03 p.m. 2 people, 290 pounds. I immediately phoned Tom to warn him. I told him I would call again as soon as he needed to get the camera ready. I also sent a signal to the recorder on the clock in the bedroom to turn it on. When I got another message at 2:32 that there was now only one person in the bed, and at 2:34 that the bed was free, I called Tom and told him to get the camera ready. I felt no joy that my plan had worked. Another cheat had ripped my heart out, though I was more optimistic than I thought. Tom called my cell phone at about 4 p.m. to let me know the results. "I've got good tape. I think good digital video. Film is no longer available these days," he hummed. At 2:56, the garage door opened and Laura's car pulled into the driveway. As it drove past my house, I could clearly make out 2 people in the car through the telephoto lens. The driver was Laura, the passenger was a guy I'd seen at your house before, and I think I'd met once before. As I recall, he had the name of a known criminal. "Clyde Barrow?" I interrupted. It made sense since Clyde weighed about 160 pounds, and given the report of the forensic accountant I'd hired. "Yeah, that's him. I stopped videotaping at 2:58. I'm ready to testify if you need me to." "Thanks, Tom. When this is over, you can name your fee." "I'd love to. I'll think of something nice. Maybe a day at the casino," he grinned. I called Dylan Roberts the next morning, Thursday. I was delighted when his secretary said, "He's not in the office right now, Mr. Stromberg, but he told me to look for him when you called. Please hold." 3 minutes later, Roberts was at the phone. "What have you got for me, Brent?" he asked, getting right to the point. I told him what I had, although I still needed to listen to the audio recorder, which I had turned off around 3 p.m. the day before. I had already handed him the forensic accountant's report at the first meeting. "Great. I already have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow, Friday, with the district attorney and the assistant district attorney who is handling the Barrow case. Let's meet Saturday morning in my office around 10 a.m. "I'll be there," I replied. Of course, I did not attend Robert's meeting with the DA, but he provided me with a full report. Like Barrow's attorney, the ADA frankly admitted that he had a 50-50 case, and when Roberts promised him a slam dunk, he and the DA practically drooled. Barrow's fraud was pervasive, and they wanted to nail him more than any other current white-collar criminal. After Roberts laid out what he had to offer, without naming any names or providing any documents, of course, the district attorney and his assistant spoke privately for only 15 minutes before returning and agreeing to Roberts' proposal. Roberts handed them a simple written agreement, which they both signed. "Gather any other information you need so we can meet with the DA on Monday at 11 a.m., Dylan told me. I transferred the text messages from Mattress TM and the audio recordings from the recorder to a CD, one copy for myself, one for Dylan, and one for the DA, made DVD copies of what Tom had recorded, and got a written statement from him. The meeting with the district attorney was simple, straightforward, and quick. 2 days before the trial, which starts the following Monday, they will hold Laura on a warrant to put her on the witness stand. They will offer her 2 years probation and 100 hours of community service if she pleads guilty to misdemeanor conspiracy and agrees to testify against Barrow. Since it was too late to add Laura to the witness list, and because they didn't want to testify for the defense anyway, she would just give rebuttal testimony, which was all that was required anyway. Laura felt for 5 days before she was called to the DA's office that something was wrong. She kept asking me if something was wrong, and I told her I was just nervous about the upcoming deposition. She probably knew there was more to it than that, especially when I was having sex with her like she was a $3 cheater instead of my loving wife. But she didn't insist. When the police arrived Saturday morning to execute the deposition warrant, a bailiff arrived at my place at the same time. By my agreement with the district attorney, Laura was allowed to bring the divorce papers with her. Cooperate with the DA, agree to the deal I worked out for you, and don't fight the divorce, and you can turn your life around, Laura, I said as I gave her one last hug. Tears were in both her and my eyes. Sunday morning, I found out from Dylan that Laura had agreed to the deal I had made, and I was a little relieved. On Monday and Tuesday, the prosecution made a prima facie case against Barrow. By the time the defense began making its case Wednesday morning, they again believed there was a 50-50 chance of conviction. John Justice was confident in his defense when he called me to testify around 3 p.m. Wednesday, but he wasn't feeling too good. After reviewing my personal information and reputation for honest community service, Justice proceeded to question me on the merits. Mr. Stromberg, are you acquainted with Mr. Samuel C. Barrow? Yes, I know Clyde Barrow well, I replied. Justice had been instructed by the judge that the prosecution could never call him Clyde Barrow because it might cause prejudice to the jury, but since I was a witness for the defense, I was not bound by that. Please just call Mr. Barrow simply Samuel or Mr. Barrow, Justice continued, a little indignantly. I'm sorry. It's just that he always wanted to be called Clyde Barrow, so that's why I addressed him that way, but now I'm going to call him Samuel, I replied, pretending to be sheepish. Justice became agitated again. Have you had any dealings with Mr. Barrow concerning his honesty and character? Yes, a great deal. Can you give me examples of situations you know of that illustrate Mr. Barrow's honesty and character? Asked Justice, moving on to the scenarios of fake honesty I had given him during our first meeting. Yes, one example is his affair with my wife behind my back, and another is his involvement with my wife in a scheme to defraud First Continental Bank in order to obtain mortgage money for houses that didn't exist, I replied nonchalantly. There was a dead silence in the courtroom that seemed like a full minute to me, but probably lasted only 10 seconds. Justice was blazing, and Clyde looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Stammering and stammering, Justice finally squeezed out something like, "Didn't you tell me in my office that Mr. Barrow has a fine reputation for honesty?" Yes, but that was before I found out he was cheating my wife behind my back and had a forensic accountant review my wife and I's finances, which revealed Clyde Barrow's fraud, I replied, this time probably unable to contain a chuckle. Justice called for a conference. The judge called a recess and retired to the chambers with the judge and the assistant district attorney. The jurors tried to suppress smiles or laughter, except for one woman who couldn't contain her amusement. I discreetly gave Clyde the finger. The judge and the lawyers returned about 10 minutes later. The judge hummed. No further questions. Then the district attorney began cross-examination, using the information I had given him. Justice kept objecting, saying things like, "Stromberg set us up. That's not what he ever told me. That's outside the scope of my questioning," all of which failed to impress either the judge or the jury. Finally, the judge said to the jury, "Your objection is noted. Now sit down and do not interrupt again." During my testimony, the jury was the most attentive they had been during the entire trial. They were fascinated by both the process and love nature of my testimony. When the judge stopped after my cross-examination, the prosecutor stood up and said, "Your Honor, we have a rebuttal. We would like to call Mr. Barrow's co-conspirator, Mrs. Laura Stromberg." Justice went into a rage. Clyde almost fell over. The judge called a recess. When he returned, the judge consulted with Clyde and then in conference asked that the trial be recessed for a day so he could talk to the district attorney about pleading guilty. The next day, Clyde pleaded guilty to the fraud charge. The district attorney gave him no special relief, 10 years before parole, restitution, and as much as 20 years if he did not become eligible for parole. The contract clearly stated that it was only fraud. As part of my communication with the prosecutor, the district attorney agreed to give Clyde 10 days to report to jail so that we could arrange for his further prosecution. Clyde threatened me as we were leaving the courtroom. I was on edge. The threat was very specific, and given the information from the voice recorder in my watch and the phone conversation Laura had arranged with Clyde after the cops picked her up, the DA had already put a wire on Clyde. After receiving a new threat and information from the wiretap, the cops arrested Clyde again. The DA had no doubt that Clyde would be convicted again, and this time not only sentenced to life in prison, but sent to a prison for violent criminals, not white-collar criminals. Laura met with me at my divorce attorney's office a week after Clyde was convicted, rearrested, and held without bail. She didn't start talking nonchalantly. "Brent, we can't live together. Do we have to get a divorce? You should know that Clyde blackmailed me by threatening to tell the authorities about my collusion with him." "From what I saw and heard, you were quite the willing victim, Laura. Plus, you had the option of coming to me, and we could have made the same deal with the DA that I did and avoided jail." She started to say something else, but I interrupted her. "But more importantly, you knew about my history with cheaters and how important loyalty is to me, and yet you deceived me." Laura, completely uncharacteristically for her, began to cry. I shed tears, too. "I love you, Brent," she sobbed. "I love you too, Laura, but it's over between us. If you really love me, you'll sign the divorce papers and you won't procrastinate. You especially need to sign an agreement with the real estate agency to sell the house, so that with your share, you can be partially reimbursed for your part in Clyde's fraud." With those words, I stood up, kissed her forehead as she continued to sob, and left. It was only a matter of time before the divorce was finalized and the house sold, and I was feeling sorry for myself in my not-so-best apartment, unwilling to get involved with another woman, when there was a knock on the door. When I opened the door, I was greeted with, "Hey, handsome, can you offer a girl a drink?" It was the woman I knew as Bonnie, a gorgeous call girl that Clyde had brought to his place on numerous occasions until Laura objected. Bonnie, what a surprise," I said, stammering. "My name is actually Amber, and I only took Bonnie because Clyde liked to pretend we were Bonnie and Clyde. Aren't you going to invite me into the house?" My mind suddenly gained some clarity. I was very horny. It had been 7 weeks since I'd last had sex with Laura, and depressed. And this woman wasn't someone I could have a romantic relationship with or expect to be exclusive with. "Sure, Amber, go ahead." After some small talk and when we both had a glass of wine in each of our hands, Amber got down to business. "Let me be blunt, Brent. I have sex for a living, but it's just a business. I'm very attracted to you, and now that you're on the road to divorce, I want to give myself pleasure. In return, I'll give you pleasure." Perhaps I should have been shocked, but I wasn't. I calmly replied, "Amber, you look great. You're fun to be with, and I have no doubt you'll have amazing sex. However, no offense, but given your profession, I wonder how medically prudent it would be to sleep with you." "You're worried for nothing, Brent, and I take no offense. 2 things might incline you toward my opinion. I have an STD-free certificate for you." She giggled. With those words, she pulled a piece of paper out of her purse. It had all the hallmarks of an authentic lab report, and it did indeed certify that Amber was free of all STDs. The document was dated just 2 days earlier. As I studied the document, Amber crawled over to me and stroked my body. Less than 5 minutes later, I was having sex with Amber. Afterward, she asked me, Do you think you could accept a call girl as a sex friend? I'd like you to take me out to dinner and dancing sometimes, not just for sex. I smiled. A couple more sex sessions like that, and you can talk me into anything you want, except exclusive relationships, because I'm done with those. After laughingly picking up and sweeping away the broken plates and glasses left over from our session on the breakfast table, Amber wanted a serious conversation. "Sounds like you like sex with me, Brent," she giggled. "Approval of the year," I grinned back. "I make so much money as an escort, you can see why, even though none of my Johns get half the effort you do, that it's enough for me to work only 3 nights a week. I propose that you and I meet on Fridays and I sleep over Friday, Monday, and Tuesday, and depending on my schedule, one more night. I promise not to pressure you into a relationship, at least not until I quit my job, which will be in about 2 years, after which I'll only do sesak for love, not money." She looked at me expectantly. She was obviously having trouble reading my facial expressions. After a pregnant pause, she asked, "So, do I have to beg?" "No, you don't have to beg. Let's try it for a month and then we'll evaluate it again. Now get dressed and let's have a real breakfast that can't have broken glass in it." Amber was as excited as a schoolgirl. She jumped up, giggled, and kissed me hard on the lips. Amber and I had agreed 18 months ago. To say it's worked out just fine would be an understatement. We spend an average of 4 nights together, and about twice a week we go out to dinner, dances, movies, ball games, or other activities. I find a relationship with Amber much more acceptable than wondering if my partner will remain faithful. I know she won't, and I don't care, and I can find another girl if I want to, although how Amber serves me has never interested me. At some point, I'll have to directly confront Amber's subtle hints about what we'll be doing when she leaves her profession in about 6 months. But I'll cross that bridge when I have to. In the meantime, I'm enjoying $2,000 worth of free sex 3 or 4 times a week. The end! Subscribe to my channel. Thank you.